SEO, reorganizing your content into topic clusters. So full disclosure, I am a web developer, but I'm going to talk about SEO today. As most web developers are, we tend to wear many hats for different things, and this is one of the hats I wear at Texas Creative, which is where I work. There's my Twitter account and my Drupal.org username, so feel free to reach out for anything that I talk about or anything really. I don't care. I'll answer it if I know it. So I've been the team lead at Texas Creative for the last 7 years. We're a full-service agency here in San Antonio, started around 1985. Half the room knows this story, so I'll just skip through some of that. But recently we launched the San Antonio River Authority site. We also built Jefferson Bank, which is a local regional bank. And the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts is another of ours, and a bunch of other things. So I've been involved in the Drupal community for about 13 years. In that time, picked up a lot on SEO and seen a lot of changes in SEO, which led to this discussion. So today we're going to talk about a few things. Topic clusters, what are they? Why do we care? What does it matter? Implementation, what do we do about moving to them? Some tips and some challenges. I can also guarantee you we will not take a full hour, so since it's the last session of the day, that should be good news. So how many people here have heard of topic clusters before seeing this session title? A few.
Is that the same as content silo?
Yeah, kind of the same idea. The topic cluster term was really coined by Hubspot, but it's the idea of, well, we'll get into it. Has anybody organized a site based on topic clusters before? Okay, a few. All right, so I'm just going to go through a quick overview of SEO and what it is and why it matters. I mean, I think most of this is self-explanatory, but I think it's worth at least getting on the same page on. So search engine optimization is basically organic traffic, right? It's getting found through search results, not paid traffic. That's typically referred to as SEM. It's not free though. A lot of hard work and mostly time goes into doing well on SEO. And I think that's a common misconception, at least we find with a lot of our clients, is they think they're just going to build a site and people will show up. And that just isn't the way it works. It takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And topic clusters really is no different than that. So one thing to think about or to keep in your mind anytime you're doing SEO work is thinking about the search engine algorithms. Is that the primary goal of a search engine is to help people find information. That's it. The way they get paid is matching those two things up and being able to serve ads in the process. So everything they're doing with that search engine algorithm is designed to match people with information. And if you remember that, it makes SEO, I think, less of a mystery when you get into how it works and why it works certain ways. So every time that Google goes in and changes the algorithm or anybody else changes their algorithm, it's always for that purpose. There's no other reason why they would do it other than to match people with information better. The greater their success at that, the more revenue they get. So let's see, one of the reasons, well, before we get into that, so why do the algorithms change? I think that's also important, is why don't they just keep it the same? I mean, isn't there like some ideal algorithm that they find that matches the most people with the most information? Well, that might be true, except for on the other side of the coin are us who are trying to game the system. So once we figure out how their algorithm's doing things, then people change their behavior and they start trying to game the system, and it messes with that information. You have all this black hat and all these kind of other things that happen on the search engine side. So they're constantly having to evolve the system to essentially punish bad behavior in this ecosystem. And that's what we see in a lot of the search engine algorithms. We'll go through some brief history here, but a lot of the search engine algorithm changes that have happened over the last decade or so have been punishing bad behavior. They've been specifically demoting content where people were just doing things that were there to game the system. So I would say, as a good rule, so you don't have to keep chasing the algorithm, is don't game the system. Just play the game, but don't game the system, I guess is the way to say it. So let's go through some history. So early on, it was all about keywords, right? If you had the right keywords, you had the right meta tag keywords, then you ranked. And then around 1996, Google comes in and it becomes all about backlinks and who's linking to your site. Then around 2010, they started adding in social signals, so social media and how that plays into the role. 2014 became about localization, so then it was about having the right local keywords in your site, and HTTPS increased your search ranking. Then 2015, it's all about mobile. If you do well in mobile, then you have higher rank. And then finally, we're at this place of topic clusters. Now, the important thing to remember about all of these things is I'm not advocating that we forget about all the other stuff and we just focus on topic cluster. The point is that we need to think about all of these things and they stack, because keywords still matter and backlinks still matter and social signals still matter. All of these things matter, just there's not one thing that you can do. So that's what we want to stack everything as we're going. So topic clusters. So a topic cluster is basically a group of pages on one general topic with a central pillar page. That's again HubSpot's word for this central page is a pillar, with many interconnected pages that expand upon related ideas to that pillar page. So we'll talk a little bit in a minute about how to determine what your topic cluster, what your pillars are, and how you reorganize your content, and whether you should or not. That's I think, a relevant question. So an example would be, this is from a site that we recently launched, the San Antonio River Authority site, has a category or an area called flood risk. It's all about your flood risk in the San Antonio area and whether your home is in a floodplain or not. And so they have this pillar page that is their main flood risk page. And then underneath that, they have the science of flood management, they have flood preparedness, assessing your home's flood risk, and a number of other pages. So that would be an example of a topic cluster that is beginning to form around this idea of flood risk that can grow over time and hopefully do well in the search engine optimization for flood risk. I mean, I would venture to say if you're looking for flood risk information in the San Antonio area, you're going to end up on one of these pages pretty quickly as this develops, especially. They're also an authority, so that helps too. So why does this topic work? Or why do topic clusters work? And I think when it comes down to it, ultimately, again, Google's trying to provide the best information to the best individual or the best people. I'm probably talking too loud. But what topic clusters does is it shows the breadth and the depth of the subject knowledge, right? So if you're building a topic cluster around a general topic, you're indicating to Google that you have expertise in that area that isn't just a page that's optimized for keywords. It's something that is that you have this, not only this breadth, but a depth of knowledge, because you're able to create a lot of content around a particular topic, and that's why it works. It gets you the most relevant results. So I've said it before, it's hard work, but it's worth it. So there's no easy way to do this well. It's just, again, a lot of time and hard work. The benefits are a high rank for these sometimes expensive terms. So what terms you might typically have to pay a lot of money for, if you build a topic cluster well, and you do all those other things we listed in the chronological history of the algorithms, then you have an opportunity to rank well for expensive terms, even though you're not paying for them, because you're building this breadth and depth of knowledge. And it shouldn't be something Google ever punishes you for, because you're doing what they want, which is providing good information at a breadth and depth of these topics. Now, the other thing is that your ancillary topics, so if you have your pillar that you're trying to rank really well on, that's your expensive term, all these kind of subtopics or long tail keywords get to come along on the coattails and come along for the ride. So by taking the time to invest in a topic cluster, you're really not just focusing on that one topic cluster. You're getting all of these other elements too. So that's one of the reasons I would say they're worth doing. Okay, so how? Any questions so far? This is all pretty straightforward so far, but we're getting into the implementation. Identifying your pillars. So a content audit, there was a session this morning on content audits. I think that's worth checking out on YouTube if you haven't already, to go through how do you inventory your content. You want to group your content in a natural way. So this is not something that you want to force. You want to look for the things that naturally rise to the top as you do your content inventory. These major categories, they shouldn't be too specific, but it can't be too general. You're looking for things that are big enough that you can create 5 or 10 or 15 pages that would be involved in that content topic without repeating yourself too much, I guess, from page to page. So these should naturally rise to the top. You also want to decide if it's even worth it. So the time that you're going to take to invest in it, is there enough traffic? And if you convert that traffic, what does that do for you? So should you even bother with that, or is it you just go ahead and create the page and you don't need to go create all this other topic around a pillar? So I think it's worth evaluating all of these questions. So a couple of strategies. This is just good content strategy, right? So blog categories might be a good way to identify some topic categories. Your product types, broad site topics. Most of this stuff, if you know your business well or you know the website well, should be pretty self-evident. And think humans first. So don't worry about so much the search engine at this point. You're thinking more about what are the humans who are coming to the site looking for. And that's really, I think, one of the better rules of SEO that will allow it to sustain over time. Okay, so building your content, your pillars. There are a few different things you can do for building the pillar pages. You want to keep it high level. You don't want to get too in depth on the pillar page itself. It shouldn't be too keyword heavy. In fact, it's best to use a variety. Google has gotten away from, if you have the keyword so many times on the page, this certain phrase, that you'll rank. So you want to think of ways to kind of mix up the keywords you're using a little bit as you're building this page. High level overview, a list of links to all the sub pages. Organize it for your visitor first, and then worry about the search engine. Again, that's the human first approach. And then again, use a few different keyword configurations. If, for instance, in the flood risk page, we might, say flood risk and talk about flood risk in San Antonio. And it's hard with only 2 words to do it many other ways. But just coming up with variations of saying the same thing, I think is beneficial. Google's getting better at natural language, so it can understand when there's variation more so now than it used to. Okay. And include all those other, SEO components. You need all your meta tags. You need all the technical SEO that's there. So just as a reminder, these are those things we talked about again. So you still need your keywords, you still need your links to different places. You still want to have your social signals linking back to those pillar pages and all the other technical parts. So then going through and reorganizing your content. What can be really beneficial here is finding those long pages that you might have created that could then be broken into multiple pages. It's a quick and easy way to create a bunch of content around a particular pillar if you have longer pages. There's nothing wrong with long pages, but there might be opportunities where there's distinct ideas within a long page that you can break up. Each page should deal with one specific idea related to the pillar, and then there should also be a linking pattern. So I think this is one of the key things with clusters that you see sometimes where people miss it, is that if you looked at that web sitemap of the site, it should be easy for you to identify based on the visual web where the cluster resides. So you don't want your clusters linking too much to other places. They should link within themselves, and then have another cluster over, and they're up at the kind of the top, which is another thing here actually. So they should link in there, and they should be, it should be obvious that they're a cluster for the search engine, that linking pattern. Let's see. Yeah, remove or reduce links to other clusters. You don't, of course, you're going to have some cross linking, but you want it to be defined. So if we drew that chart out, you say, oh, this is definitely a topic cluster, and the way the pages link to each other. Okay, so let's see. And then you'll need to identify new content. There will be gaps in the coverage that you obviously will need to write new content. Quality over quantity. As you can see that first example, we have maybe 5 or 6 pages in that topic cluster that's beginning to form. It's not done yet, but it's a good start. So take the time to do it the right way. So a few tips that we find will work well is that not everything needs to be a cluster. You need to, again, evaluate whether it should be or not. And if it's not worth investing in it, then don't do it. Just go with normal, single page is fine. Start small, one at a time is fine. You don't have to revamp your whole website unless you're rebuilding something and it makes sense to do that. And then also the pillars belong at the top. So one of the things that they found in the research when they're doing these topic clusters is that if the URLs start with the pillar name as the first part after the domain, and then the subpages are branched off of that, they rank a lot better than if it's /blog and then there's the pillar name, and then so you want to move those pillar names up as far up in the structure of the site, so they're kind of the top level navigation pages and your URLs. So I think from Drupal's standpoint, Path Auto is your friend here. If you create your pillar pages, you can structure that to kind of happen automatically where those URLs are generated the right way. Okay, I told you it would be quick. This is the last slide. So the challenges of this is it doesn't really matter whether you have lots of content or a little content. This is challenging. With lots of content, it's very time consuming and can be extremely complex to do that audit and distill everything and figure out the right way to structure everything. If you have very little content, sometimes identifying the pillars or what should be a pillar is going to be a little difficult, and then there's going to be content that has to be created, which we all know if we've built any sites at all that generating content is oftentimes the hardest part of any site build. Getting it organized and generated. So I think those are the big challenges, and again, it's just hard work and time. But I would challenge you, if we look at the list, is start thinking about building these topic clusters, and they should last a long time as the algorithm changes. It's not something that you'll ever have to undo. It should just continue to be of benefit in the future. Okay, that was it. Any questions? Told you we'd be quick. Wow, how fast was that? 15 minutes. Go ahead.
So, going back to the sort of taxonomy that I created when
Yeah.
we were first born, which was categories, right? And it was trying to keep it a really limited number of categories and not go batshit crazy with them, so they really dilute the whole thing. So what you're talking about then is beyond a category, it would be creating what I used to call a splash page almost, or, right? I mean, where I would try to put an overview page about, like immigration, okay? I've got a category for immigration, but it would be a splash page that would then peel off all the different parts of immigration that, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good example. You don't want it to be just we think of the stereotypical blog listing page, which is just a list of a bunch of blog posts. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not going to give you a lot of benefit beyond just the pages that it's linking to. So there should be some content of its own on the pillar page, and I think obviously the more you make it useful and the more humans find it useful, that's also going to improve the rank, which is going to improve the whole cluster. So building these splash pages or these pages that have unique content, they also have a list of all the other things that are related, but they have their own content, and as an overview is definitely helpful.
Do you have an example of, or two questions, how much writing should we, I don't wanna say is there a minimum word count, but is there a minimum word count that I should put on a pillar page? It's like, well, do you have a good pillar page you can show us?
Let me just look at the. This is not my computer, so I will.
I didn't know if
see
I
what
need to
can do
think
here.
about like 3 to 5 sentences or 3 to 5 paragraphs, you know? Is how much is gonna be too much text, because we're getting into minimizing text these days, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a specific number for the pillar page. I think in the sense of any SEO optimized page there's a minimum amount of content that's needed just for it to function as a page. So a paragraph or two is probably the minimum, I would say, in any page that you're creating, or it's just going to be useless from an SEO standpoint. Let me see if I can
A lot of
figure it
people
out.
say to mix it up, you
Yeah.
know, have long form content, short content, medium content, just so you're catching everything.
Yeah, well, with the pillar structure, it seemed to make sense that the long form content is the support to the
Sure.
pillar. So
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to.
In couple of cases where we have seen success is treat that page like a homepage, right?
It's by your
And
site.
yeah, and small page with different. So it all depends on your related content as well. So if you have a lot of related content to the pillar page, it's better if it's a long page, right? Where you have a lot of structured, blocks with different kind of content. But if you have less related content, then better to be small page. Right? So yeah, I mean it's just that whatever the related pages are, how do you structure them in an information as a home page? If you look at that way, that helps.
Okay.
I mean, there was one guy which actually put together a pillar page for Slack. How do you use Slack and all this thing? It was such a long page. I can remember. But it ranked really well for it. Really, really well. And it got
Yeah.
it got shared a lot as well.
Yeah, so in this San Antonio River Authority site, this whole section over here, they called their learning modules. So these were created as kind of educational modules, but they work really well as topic clusters too, because they're, the flood risk section is a high level page, and this is an evolving, section. I would say it's not complete, it's not the ideal topic cluster, but it's an example. We've got some general information at the top, and there's a video. All of the kind of sub pages to this topic are all down here along the side, and there's a table of contents. And then there's a nice paragraph or so, some images, and this page is a little bit longer, but it gives you an overview of flood risk and what is it. And then as we get into the specifics of flood management and protection and preparedness and low impact development and all these kind of related topics that then link back. In this case, we're using the book module. I mean, when is the last time anybody's used the book module? But it worked really well here because we wanted it to be this learning module process where you went kind of from step 1 to step 2. But at the same time, each of these pages stand on their own and could be discovered and searched and found through search. And so that works really well. And so our pager just takes you to the next one. We don't really use a previous. We only use a next in this particular case. But
We found that having the things on the left are great, but also internal linking.
Yeah.
Like if you're talking about that topic later down, to go ahead and link to another cluster page.
Yeah.
Because it reinforces, both from an bot perspective and the usability perspective.
yeah, I think that's a good point. When I was talking earlier about being able to see it, if you did all the sitemap, that topic cluster, it's not just about that each of those pages link and they only link to each other, but there's about an idea of density of links too, so that there's interconnectedness among.
Don't go crazy. Those
yeah.
pages that have a link every other one,
Yeah.
let's just get pitched by Google or by Google.
So this game is becoming much more, I would say, artistic, like elegant to play. It's not so brute force as it used to be, where if you had all the keywords and you could rank well, then Google's punishing all that. So you have to finesse it a bit more. So there's an A/B testing trial and error process here that's necessary.
I can search the web for that. Just tap the search below.
Is it telling us about flood risk?
Maybe so.
All right, I appreciate you pulling that up because I was going to ask you to show us how you did that. And I think I'm getting an understanding of how you organized it, but when you were doing that, what are some of the changes you made from the beginning when you first said this is how we're going to lay this out to where it's at the end? Like, how did you, when you were writing things down, when you were charting things out, what changes did you make during that process?
Yeah, well, I think Josh did a lot of the organizing of these particular sections of the site. The client gave us a folder of big, huge document of everything that's in this entire section, along with all the images, and just said here. And so it was a lot of going through and figuring out which pieces of the content went together and what could be succinct pages and what should be succinct pages. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, they mostly they didn't know that they had done it, but they had sort of done the topic cluster work for us in this particular section already, because they wanted to teach people. There's a big misunderstanding about the River Authority about what they actually do, so they had already started thinking about, well, we do stuff with flood risks, and we build dams and maintain them and try to encourage people to develop areas with pervious surfaces so water seeps into the ground. So they were already thinking in that way and had written it as like a big story. Our job was really just to edit it down into like chapters, essentially. Like Art said, we used this book module, which worked perfectly. I didn't even know what the book module was either, so I was kind of playing into, the client played into my hands and I played into Art's hands. I think that's how it ended up. But then it was just kind of looking at it from the standpoint of, well, how much would someone want to read before they could continue on? We didn't want this to be one big long page. So we just further kind of cut this stuff up into sections that just work beautifully in the topic cluster trend.
Yeah, it did.
How did you verify this? Like, did you go back and look at metrics of how this stuff ranks? Or?
It's still pretty early, so I don't know. We haven't done a ton of that yet, and this wasn't necessarily something we sat down and said we need to make a topic cluster. I think it happens organically to some degree. It should anyway, where anytime we're looking at a site that we're building and we start doing a content audit and looking at it, we're thinking, how do we organize this so that humans can find what they need to find here and the client accomplishes the conversion that they're after, or the whatever the goal is of the site. So it naturally leads to topic clusters, I think, in some cases. Now, there's certain content that should just stand on its own. But again, you have to judge whether it's worth, and do you have enough content in that area to even validate doing it or not. So, but yeah, going back and testing it would be part of the next. I mean, that's not necessarily something they've engaged us to do, but I think it should be the next natural step in optimizing this content. Is like, what are the gaps and how can we continue down this road?
One good trick is to just go to the webmaster to look at the keywords that you're already ranking for, which is bringing you the most of the traffic, and then go to the AdWords, and try and buy a specific that particular keyword. Because right now, if you're looking at buying a particular keyword, it actually translates into a topic cluster. It doesn't allow you to buy from a keyword point of view. It actually makes you buy from a topic cluster point of view. Mm-hmm. So that will give you the topic cluster piece. So, for example, we work in Drupal. There are multiple keywords like Drupal development, Drupal developers, right? Acquia Drupal, and multiple keywords. And that translates to a particular keyword cluster in AdWords, and that would essentially become my pillar page. Right. So that's a good way to essentially look at what is that bringing traffic to you, and then what is Google treating as a corresponding pillar, page or pillar keyword, and finding that.
Yeah. So one of the, I'll show our website. I don't want to give away too much secret sauce here, but we do this on our own site, and I think that's where we see the analytics more than anything. Our Drupal page does really well for us in the San Antonio area for Drupal. But if you look at it, it has general content, talks about what is Drupal and our contributions to it, but it also links to all of our blog posts. And we're building out other things, but this is really useful. And if you start digging in the blog, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of pages about that. We've done very similar things, and we've had situations where we have a particular service that we want to promote, and we don't really want to go and buy a bunch of ads. It's a super competitive space, right? Marketing is. But we've had very good success building a page and some ancillary pages to it, and within 2 or 3 weeks, ranking at least locally in the top of the first page of Google on those things. So I think it's proven to us that it's worth doing that optimization when we have a topic we want to push. We don't take, not every one, if you go back to that services page, not every one of these services pages is going to have that kind of development to it, but the ones that we have done have made a big impact. And we've seen growth in that area of our business, over the next 6 months to 12 months, tangibly.
So bottom line, be intentional.
Yeah. It's worth putting the effort in if you pick the right things and you take the time to do it. Any other questions?
Have you found time on site versus total number of pages to be a better SEO trigger? Because depending on how long you make things,
Yeah.
they're going to read it longer versus breaking it up. Then they might go to more pages if you break it up. I haven't really figured out which one of those is better.
Isn't there also scroll depth?
So what?
Scroll depth, you can tell how far they've scrolled
Is
down
that
onto
a
it.
GA factor?
That's, you have to, it's an extra one you have to add into a website, but you can tell how far a user has scrolled down one of the longer scroll pages, so you can see how
Maybe
many
I'd be
pages
interested in
are
knowing which ones affect your overall SEO ranking better.
Yeah.
Is it better to have a
Oh,
longer
yeah.
page time on page, or is it better to have more pages viewed?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if that's
Nobody
yeah.
seems to really know.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely on a page, more time on a page.
Is that better than more
more
links?
Yeah,
You think
more
so?
links.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Because the
that
less-
would say maybe make a longer page.
Yeah, if you have one page website and people are actually engaging it and putting up forms and not bouncing back, that's perfect.
But then you can only rank for that one page and that one
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
All your eggs in one basket approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else?